We light our chalice, a symbol of the living tradition of Unitarian Universalism, which we are called upon to carry forward. We light this flame to recognize that making dreams real demands that we do something active, that we light the way and wait for no other hand to awaken, and do the work which we inherit. Blessed are we that our work is not sad drudgery, in kinship and love, and shared purpose and power.
Let us join in the words of our covenant. We unite to strengthen the bonds of kinship among all persons, to promote human dignity, and to increase reverence for life's creating, sustaining, and transforming power through worship, study, and service. You may be seated. Martin Luther King Jr. was born in Atlanta, Georgia, January 15th, 1929. He was born into a family of preachers, a very religious family, and though he was born during a time when people of color were treated with even more disrespect and cruelty than they are now, his family encouraged him and taught him to feel proud of who he was and to see all people as equal. He was a smart student, and he went on to Morehouse College and Crozer Theological Seminary, and he studied at Yale University, Edinburgh College in Scotland, and he got his PhD from Boston University, graduating when he was only 25 years old. He believed what his parents told him, that he was equal as, he was as good as, he had a shining heart and a keen mind. He became a preacher too, and his voice was inspirational, helping people to see that our spiritual lives and our lives in the world are one and the same. No matter what faith we follow, it follows from our faith that we are led into the world. He was a minister and became a leader in the civil rights movement because of the passion and truth and power of his words. He didn't seek to be a leader, but he was willing to live his principles and be true to his belief in the equality of all people. In 1966, Dr. King spoke at the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly. And though he was not a Unitarian Universalist, he knew well and worked with many Unitarian Universalist ministers in the civil rights movement, many of whom he'd known from his school days. He was a leader of nonviolent protest, a teacher of nonviolence in a way that inspired countless people, young and old, to take to the streets and lunch counters and buses and the nation's capital to be a visible presence, voice, and power for change. It took many years of work. And on April 3rd, 1968, sadly, the Reverend Dr. King was killed in Memphis, Tennessee. His birthday is celebrated as a national holiday because he's a vital figure in the history of this nation, as great as or greater than any president, and someone who shifted the direction of history in and with his lifetime. But it's equally important to celebrate his birthday as a religious holiday, because his work was to make whole our individual spirits, as well as the spirit of our nation and our world. He said, as many of you know, we are tied together in a single garment of destiny, caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. Whatever affects one affects all, directly or indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. This is Mrs. Elliott. She was a young teacher in Iowa 50 years ago. That year, in February, her third grade class had honored the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as their special person of the month in February. But in that very same April, Dr. King was killed. And Mrs. Elliott decided it was time to teach her students more about the racism that prevented our nation from fulfilling its promise of freedom and equality. We're going to see a short piece of film about what happened in her classroom. But before we start this film clip, I'd like to ask you to take the piece of ribbon and the safety pin that you received as you came in and use the pin to attach this ribbon to a visible place on the front of your shirt. And if you're a young child, you might have, or me, you might have a parent or the adult that you came with attach the ribbon for you. And now we're going to watch.
This is a special week. Does anybody know what it is?
National Brotherhood.
National Brotherhood Week. What's brotherhood?
Be kind to your brothers. Be kind.
Okay, be kind to your brothers. Treat everyone as though he was your brother. And is there anyone in this United States that we do not treat as our brothers?
Yes.
Who?
Yeah.
The black people. Who else?
Indians.
Absolutely, the Indians. And when many people see a black person or a yellow person or a red person, what do they think? Many places in the United States. How are black people treated? How are Indians treated? How are people who are of a different color than we are treated?
They don't get anything in this world.
Why is that?
Because they're different colors.
You think you know how that would feel to be judged by the color of your skin?
Yeah.
Do you think you do? No, I don't think you'd know how that felt unless you had been through it, would you? It might be interesting to judge people today by the color of their eyes. Would you like to try this?
Yeah.
Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Since I'm the teacher and I have blue eyes, I think maybe the blue-eyed people should be on top the first day. I mean, the blue-eyed people are the better people in this room. Blue-eyed people are smarter than brown-eyed people.
My dad isn't that stupid.
Is your dad brown-eyed?
Yeah.
Blue-eyed people are better than brown-eyed people. Are you brown-eyed or blue-eyed?
Blue.
Why are you shaking your head?
I don't know.
Are you sure that you're right? What makes you so sure that you're right? The blue-eyed people get 5 extra minutes of recess, while the brown-eyed people have to stay in. The brown-eyed people do not get to use the drinking fountain. You'll have to use the paper cups. You brown-eyed people are not to play with the blue-eyed people on the playground because you are not as good as blue-eyed people. Well, the brown-eyed people in this room today are going to wear collars so that we can tell from a distance what color your eyes are. Who goes first to lunch? The blue-eyed people. No brown-eyed people go back for seconds. Blue-eyed people may go back for seconds. Brown-eyed people do not. It might take too much.
And it seemed like when we were down on the bottom, everything bad was happening to us.
The way they treated you, you felt like you didn't even want to try to do anything.
What happened, John?
Russell called me names and I hit him.
What did he call you?
Brown eyes.
Did you call him brown eyes?
They always call us that. Craig and all of the boys call us that. They keep calling us brown eyes. They say, come here, brown eyes.
What's wrong with being called brown eyes?
It means that we're stupider. Well, not that. But, oh, that's just the same way as other people call black people.
Did it stop him? Why do you suppose you call him brown eyes?
Right, because he has brown eyes.
Is that the only reason? He didn't call him brown eyes yesterday, and he had brown eyes yesterday. Didn't he?
Ever since you put those blue things on
They
there.
tease them. Kind of tease them.
Oh, is this teasing?
No.
Doing it for fun, to be funny, or are you doing it to be mean? I watched what had been marvelous, cooperative, wonderful, thoughtful children turn into vicious, discriminating in a space of 15 minutes. Yesterday, I told you that brown-eyed people aren't as good as blue-eyed people. That wasn't true. The truth is that brown-eyed people are better than blue-eyed people. The brown-eyed people may take off their collars, and each of you may put your collar on a blue-eyed person. The brown-eyed people get 5 extra minutes of recess. You blue-eyed people are not allowed to be on the playground equipment. You blue-eyed people are not to play with the brown-eyed people. Brown-eyed people are better than blue-eyed people. They're smarter than blue-eyed people. And if you don't believe it, look at Brian. Do blue-eyed people know how to sit in a chair? Very sad. Now that's beautiful writing. Is that better?
Yes.
Brown-eyed people learn fast, don't they?
Yeah.
We used the card pack. And the children, the brown-eyed children, were in the low class the first day, and it took them 5.5 minutes to get through the card pack. The second day, it took them 2.5 minutes. The only thing that had changed was the fact that now they were superior people. Why couldn't you get them yesterday?
We had those collars on.
You think the collars kept you?
We just keep thinking about those collars.
How long did it take you yesterday?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. How long did it take you today?
4 minutes and 18 seconds.
What happened?
One down.
Why? What were you thinking of?
This.
I hate today
How do you do? I hate too.
because I'm blue-eyed.
See, I am too.
There's nothing, it's not funny, it's not fun, it's not pleasant. This is a filthy, nasty word called discrimination. Is that fair?
No.
Nothing fair about it. We didn't say this was going to be a fair day, did we?
No.
And it isn't. It's a horrid day. What did you people who are wearing blue collars now find out today?
I know what they felt like yesterday. I did too.
How did they feel yesterday?
Down. It feels like I changed them up.
Should the color of some other person's eyes have anything to do with how you treat them?
No.
All right, then should the color of their skin?
No.
Should you judge people by the color of their skin?
No.
You're going to say that today and this week and probably all the time you're in this room. You'll then,
No, Miss Dillon.
when you see a black man or an Indian or someone walking down the street, does it make any difference whether their skin is black or white?
No.
Or yellow?
No.
Or red?
No.
Is that how you decide whether people are good or bad?
No.
Is that what makes people good or bad?
No.
Let's take these collars off. Now you know a little bit more than you knew at the beginning of this week?
Yes. A lot.
Do you know a little bit more than you wanted to?
Yes.
Now, let's all sit down here together. Blue eyes and brown eyes. Does it make any difference what color you are?
No.
Okay, now are you back?
Yes.
That feel better?
Yes.
Does the color of eyes that you have make any difference in the kind of person you are? Does that feel like being home again?
This was the 3rd time Jane Elliott had taught her lesson in discrimination.
On the day after Martin Luther King was killed, one of my students came into the room and said, "They shot a king last night, Mrs. Elliott. Why'd they shoot that king?" I knew the night before that it was time to deal with this in a concrete way, not just talk about it. The shooting of Martin Luther King, who had been one of our heroes of the month in February, could not just be talked about and explained away. There was no way to explain this to little 3rd graders in Riceville, Iowa. As I listened to the white male commentators on TV the night before, the attitude was so arrogant and so condescending and so ungodly that I thought if white male adults react this way? What are my third graders going to do? I thought of what we had done with the Indians. We haven't made much progress. And I thought this is the time now to teach them really what the Sioux Indian prayer that says, "O Great Spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I have walked in his moccasins," really means. And for the next day, I knew that my children were going to walk in someone else's moccasins for a day. So the next day, I introduced an eye color exercise in my classroom and split the class according to eye color, and immediately created a microcosm of society in a third grade classroom.
What began in a third grade classroom has spread. At the center is still a single teacher, determined to inoculate her students, both young and old, against the virus of bigotry.
When you're all back together and you're all one again, you find out how society could be if we really believed all this stuff that we preach.
So how many of you have experienced or witnessed bullying? Yeah. Today you're wearing a pink ribbon. And that ribbon today is just like the collars Mrs. Elliott used in her classroom all those years ago. All of the isms that we know about, that we talk about, racism, sexism, ageism, classism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, are all kept in place by bullying. In just a short time, children who had been friends were then divided by eye color and created a small society of bullying. They only had to live in it for a day, but they were so relieved when they were told it wasn't true and they could look at one another as classmates and friends again. You see bullying on playgrounds and even in Washington, D.C. right now. A hand in the face, a stubborn expression, a shove on the playground after school, a mean email or text or tweet or Instagram, a cruel name, a look that says that someone isn't as good as someone else. Unfair laws, a version of history that tries to cover up hard realities, like the state of Texas that wanted to make sure that slavery was glossed over or erased from textbooks. When some police trust one group of people and not another. When I was in high school, spending weekends at the fancy home of a classmate whose little brother and sister I was babysitting for, one day the mother was in the kitchen with another of many drinks in her hand, and she confronted me and said, "You think you're better than we are." It wasn't true. I didn't even know what she was talking about at the moment. It's true, I was intimidated by their wealth. "No," I said, I don't think that. She said, "You think you're better because you're smarter." I was starting to catch on. "No," I said, I'm not smarter. My grades were far from perfect. And then she said, "You people." And then I started to get what she was talking about. She meant Jewish people. "You may be smarter, but we have the money." "Yes, you do," I said, keenly aware of their franchises in a very large global company. But in the moment, I felt ashamed and small when she said that. And then in the next moment, looking at her drink, I could see how miserably unhappy she was with that drink in her extremely big house, how insecure she felt, and I knew that neither one of us was any better than the other, just different. I knew that her words, her mean words, came out of some pain I didn't understand at the time, and I felt bullied. But I knew that pretty much everyone at my school was richer than me. And I saw that it didn't make either of us better or worse than the other.
Maya Gonzalez, in a recent book for children, wrote, "Seeing keeps us strong. Together we look and see bully history and behaviors. Sadly, our own United States history is rooted in a strong form of bullying called colonization. Thank you. People came from Europe to this continent and wanted it for their own. They bullied the Native Americans who had always lived here. Many Native American people lost their lives through campaigns to drive them out of their houses and destroy their way of life. The people who came to this continent wanted great wealth and control. They kidnapped and bullied Africans to work for them as slaves. 12 of the first 18 presidents owned African people's property. Many African Americans were killed while in slavery, and because of the cruelty of slavery, from Texas to California, Mexico was pushed into a war so the U.S. could get more land. Afterwards, Mexicans already living on this land became second-class citizens without equal rights. All three of these communities, Native Americans, African Americans, and Mexican Americans, are still bullied in the United States because of our history. Other communities bullied in the United States are Muslims, Sikh Americans, Asian Americans, and many other immigrants. And from all communities, LGBTQ Americans, disabled Americans, and Americans who identify as women or girls are bullied. But when we look closer and see through bullying, we see you. You are the truth. Together, we can see that bullying is not based in truth because everyone deserves to be themselves, equally and freely. That is the truth. Standing in your truth keeps you strong. Knowing that you are truth keeps you strong. Doing keeps us strong. Being keeps us strong. Knowing the way things work keeps us strong. Being bullied feels crummy. But together we are strong, and that includes you. Together we are strong.
Maya Gonzalez understands a lot about how we see the truth and how we can see the possibilities for even more truth. It can be a terrible sorrow, a wound, to live with the bullying of our history, especially if you came from a group that has been bullied for generations. It can wound the soul. But when we see ourselves and one another clearly, deeply, humanly, we begin to see parts of the truth. A poet named Adrienne Rich said that when someone tells the truth, it extends the possibilities of life between us. The truth is that human beings matter, and that means that you matter, and I matter. The children in Mrs. Elliott's class learned the truth. They learned about their own capacity to be prejudiced, and they learned a little bit about the pain of bigotry. And they learned the deeper truth that everyone has inherent worth and dignity, equality and humanity, and it began to change them for the rest of their lives. The film clip was part of a Frontline program about her experiment, and it showed what the children grew up to be like and showed some of their conversations. You can look online and find it on, YouTube. It's not an intellectual exercise to walk a mile in shoes other people have had to wear for generations. It is a spiritual, societal, empathy-building, heart-expanding, soul-building exercise, and while it only lasted a day and not a generation or generations, it was still an opportunity to walk a mile, though only a mile, in the shoes of another. So your project today is to keep this ribbon on all day. If you're a person whose heritage is white, not Hispanic, not African American, or African, or South Asian, or East Asian, or Middle Eastern, or I'm sure I'm forgetting. But I invite those of us who are white to keep the ribbons on through the potluck after the service, and if those of you who are persons of color want to keep it on so you're not different during the potluck, that's fine. But for the rest of the day, only those of us whose heritage is white, please keep this on. Keep this on and keep it visible, not inside your coat, but on your shirt, outside your coat. That works for all of us. It isn't an intellectual exercise. It is a spiritual exercise. And I ask you to engage in it for the day, thinking about the ribbon that you're wearing. Racism is a disease that sickens and taints the heart of our nation and much of our world, as long as we fail to acknowledge and work on it. I'm proud of the 2 groups of people at Countryside, who include the board, who are beginning the work of beloved conversations on race. I'm proud of the people already signing up to read and discuss the book White Fragility by Beverly D'Angelo, beginning in February. And I'm proud of the increasing work in this congregation to confront the disease of racism. And for every one of you wearing this ribbon today, I give you props in advance for your courage in taking on this deeper work of learning about something that in fact infects us each individually and our society as a whole, whether we are wearing the ribbons or the skin colors or not. So today, take time and talk with each other. Perhaps over the potluck you might discuss, how did you feel when you realized what the ribbon was about? How would you feel if half the people around you were going to treat you the way the kids with the collars on were treated in the experiment? How do you feel about wearing it throughout the day? How would you feel if someone asks you about it? And if you want to remove it, what does that say about your own understanding and feelings about differences of race or differences in general? Or your own willingness to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. But above all, take time today to think about what life would be like if you could never take the ribbon off, if it was part of who you are, part of your parents and their parents and your children, and instead of it being beautiful and bright and pink, it was not seen in its beauty. And you were not seen in yours. Grateful for all the gifts we are given in this place and time and in this life. Aware of all the struggles that we carry, we take time in prayer. Spirit of life and love and ground of being and sea and stream in which we live and move and have our being, God in all names and beyond all naming, awaken us in this moment as we swim, as we move toward greater wisdom and learn to understand ourselves and one another more deeply. Let us swim and move with courage. Let love fill our hearts with courage. Let love allow us to reach out to one another in times of hardship for comfort or to comfort. Let love embolden us to work in every way that we can to build the beloved community within and far beyond these walls where the beloved community should thrive. As we move through this life as human beings, let us take time not only to do, but to be. And out of our being, our human being, let us be doing on behalf of humanity. May the spirit of love and life be strong within us on this day and all days to come. May we shine with love. May we work with purpose. Amen.
Langston Hughes wrote, "I dream a world where man no other man will scorn, where love will bless the earth and peace its paths adorn. I dream a world where all will know sweet freedom's way, where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day. A world I dream where black or white, whatever race you be, will share the bounties of the earth, and every man is free, where wretchedness will hang its head, and joy like a pearl attends the needs of all mankind. Of such I dream, my world."
This reading is from the poem "And Still I Rise" by Maya Angelou. It is spoken in her voice, the voice of a Black woman. But in her words, I also hear the story of my own Native American roots. Through her words, I hear the fortitude of my great-grandfather, who in 1902 loaded his family into a covered wagon to escape the oppression of the reservation lands and move blindly across the country in search of a better way. I also hear the bravery of my own Swedish grandfather, who in 1912 faced the ostracization of his own family to marry my grandmother, even though she was not white. I, like Maya Angelou, feel that I, in the hopes and dreams of my ancestors. And Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. And you may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may tread me in the very dirt, yet still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns, and with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, because my laughter, I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Now, if this speaks to you, I'd like to have you join me in the words, I'll rise, when we come to that. Out of the huts of history's shame, I'll rise. Up from the past, rooted in pain, I'll rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I'll rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hopes of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise.
Rise up. Time to get a little movement going here. Ready? Reach down, if you can, to get the power from the grassroots. Then reach up to the sky for inspiration. Move against injustice however you see fit. Create winds of change. And work for justice together, holding hands. There. We've got the power.
We've got
the power. All right. Oh, stay standing. Stay standing. Right.
When I don't feel like typing out the lyrics to our hymns, I go to a website called farfringe.com, where the Reverend Kimberly DeBus has researched and commented on every single hymn we sing and included all the words. I usually appreciate her commentary, and I appreciated her commentary on the hymn we're about to sing. She wrote, "I think I know why white people don't sing this song so well. I may be late to the party on this, but it dawned on me as I was singing, we don't know what it's like not to be free. We get close," she wrote, "if we're female or queer or live with a disability or we're trans. We know the hard, scary restrictions and compromises to our rights. We white people can sing this all day long and groove to versions of this song by John Legend and the Roots and Nina Simone and Natalie Cole, who sang it at the White House in 2010, or even the original by New York City jazzman Billy Taylor. But the truth is, we can only listen to the deep soul-rooted longing of the African Americans for whom this is a reality." She goes on, "For what it's worth, I love the song and I've sung it with gusto because in my heart of hearts, I wish everyone could be free, but I can't sing it the way it's meant to be sung because I can't pretend for a second I understand the longing in my deep soul root." Along with Reverend DeBus, I love this hymn. I've sung it with gusto myself for over 30 years. And even though I've lived with oppression and suffering in various forms, the racial context of this song is not my context. I can't personally imagine the longing of freedom, for freedom, that filled the heart of a human who is enslaved. I personally can't imagine the longing for freedom that filled the heart of a person of color in the Jim Crow South, where their lives were terrorized every day. I can't imagine the power of the word freedom when sung by a person of color marching with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. or marching in America today. I sing this hymn in part to sing out on behalf of the freedoms that we yearn for that are universal, and in larger part to honor the struggle for freedom that is the legacy of our history of oppression and exploitation. I wish I knew how, collectively, it would feel to be free. Let us sing together. Let us take lessons from this place and inspiration. Let us go forth from this place in a spirit of peace and love and courage, and return ever to this place with our hearts open and our hands ready to do the work of building the beloved community, which is the work of healing our world. Let us make it so. Amen. And blessed be.